Hi, Haley.
Hello, Brian. We're back.
I'm glad we're back. It's been a while, and you
It's
look great.
Thank you.
Um, since we saw each other, we each celebrated Thanksgiving. Tell me about yours.
So I'm boycotting the US right now, so I wasn't really wanting to do the full sort of celebration of US and Thanksgiving, so we turned it into a giving of thanks. And three of us from New York put together a dinner for ourselves and some of our Mexican friends and sort of introduced them to sort of the stuff we loved about Thanksgiving and made it very much about friendship and giving thanks and being fully present with each other and kind of being able to share cultures.
And so was your meal traditional?
It was pretty traditional. It's a little bit hard to get a lot of the stuff that we all love. So we met
Uh-huh.
beforehand, the three of us that were from New York met beforehand and were like, okay, this is the stuff we love about Thanksgiving. So pumpkin pie was top of the list. Another friend was stuffing. Another friend was the sweet potatoes. So we made sure
I
we had those things.
Yeah.
Biscuits and then we kind of just put together. So instead of turkey, we had chicken because we couldn't find, a turkey, and plus they're so massive.
Uh-huh.
We couldn't find sort of the biscuits, so we ended up making biscuits from empanada pastry.
I've never had biscuits for Thanksgiving.
Apparently, it's a thing in some houses. It's wonderful.
Ah,
So we learned a lot
tell
about each other.
and what did your Mexican friends feel about the experience?
Um, I think the overwhelming sort of comment was that it was very white.
Uh-huh. I mean,
Um,
too many white people or too many white
I think
customs,
it's because it was just there were only three white people, and we
right?
had, I think, five Mexicans. But I think because it's such a US holiday and it's a very sort of Western tradition and very Western food, and for them, it's very sort of stereotypical of what they think we do. And I
Okay.
think to fill that stereotype for them.
Yeah, yeah. We had some friends over last night, black couple talking about stereotypes and how everyone is subjected to them by some other group. No matter, there's nobody who's free of them.
I think
Uh,
we're all biased at some point.
yeah,
And, I think part of the hero's journey is having the humility to recognize those biases and be able to say, right, how do I unwind out of this? Or how do I be at least aware of it, but perhaps not project it?
tell me about boycotting the U.S. What does that mean?
Um, I'm, it's, I'm in an interesting place because I want to be fully present with where I am and fully present in my day, which means I'm entirely blessed and I live in a very peaceful bubble where everything's very much easier and far more peaceful and far more worried about what we're doing today. But I'm also wanting to make sure that I'm not being sort of ignorant and burying my head in the sand. And I've noticed sort of over the last probably month that it's been very difficult to sort of find my way in that, to be fully present in my physical location and with the
Mm.
physicality of where I am, but also being aware and trying to figure out what's happening in the world and how much is happening in the world and where the truth is on that. And for me, my truth is that I'm I personally, whether, and there's definitely bias in there, but based on the information that I have, the research that I have, I'm not supportive of the US government and the US politics and the human rights record of the US. So I'm kind of just not wanting to support that. So not
You're
looking.
you're primar you're primarily thinking about Israel and
Um,
Gaza.
it's I would say that it's more against sort of non-American people because this has been something that's been bothering me since the US invaded sort of Kuwait.
Uh-huh.
Well, no, they didn't invade. They invaded Iraq to save the Kuwait. So it's been sort of a thing that's been with me where I've been questioning it, and I've done research on sort of things that have happened since the Second World War. And obviously, you know, the US has this occupation history with the Native Americans, and sort of questioning that too, and kind of trying to find out where I am with it, where my truth is with it, and how I want to move forward with my mantra of don't be the contradiction.
Uh-huh. That's, you know, that's a good summary in terms of not being the contradiction. As I understand it, it means that you have a philosophy of each person has their own reality, their own understanding. And once you leave that belief and start siding with, you know, one opinion, then you're not the person that you want to be. You know, is that correct?
And I
Because
think it's very, like right now, it's a very slippery slope. Like
it
it's
is,
very hard to sort of catch yourself and ask yourself the question, am I being grounded? Am I being clear?
yeah. And it's really hard. And you know, last night with these couple, Pam and Richard, we were talking about post-traumatic stress and how a person of color in this country, the United States, especially African Americans, have just a lifetime of uh, traumatic experiences. I mean, one of the guy last night, who's a brilliant, brilliant, handsome, he gets repeatedly stopped by the police, pull over, you know, for no reason, and that he, you know, puts his hand on the winch on the driver's. He knows all the things to do to avoid being shot, but to live every day with the awareness that you could be shot um, is very stressful. And I told him, I said, you know what? I'm ashamed of being white. I said, white people have done such awful, awful things to others. And he said, you can't don't be ashamed. You didn't do it. He said, you know, and you have an enlightened, you know, an awareness of how unjust it is, and you're working to change the world. But I'll tell you, you know, when we watch a TV show, like we just started one about a black sheriff and how the Southern soldiers treated the blacks, you know, who were walking with them. It just made me so angry, you know, and I have this bias about Southerners, you know, especially around the war, and so many of are in red state. But I know that I've got to let go of that because there's some really, 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 really good people. And the people who I don't think are really good, that's my bias. I mean, I don't know the reality. I don't know their story. I don't know what's motivating them. I don't know what's motivating the people who, you know, are diehard Trump supporters. I have no idea what motivates them. And but that doesn't mean that I'm criticizing them. It just means that I don't understand it.
And I think we have to allow ourselves to say, I don't know,
Yeah,
and to leave it at that. It's not
yeah,
something that is a lack of intellect or anything else. I think it's incredible humility to be able to just say, I don't know, or I don't know enough to be able to opine on these things. But yeah, it's, you know, with my sessions over the last sort of month, there has been a lot of talk about being present, and do I feel guilty or do I feel blessed, and is it okay to feel blessed, or is that sort of not taking into account with compassion or empathy. And I think what we're seeing in the world today is a very big glare of double standards. And I think as long as we have double standards at the individual level, there will always be double standards at the collective.
no, absolutely. Because the collective is all of us united as one organism.
Yeah.
I believe, And so whatever happens, just using Israel and the West Bank or Gaza as an example, whether we involve ourselves in that or not, it affects us. It affects our life in ways that we're not even aware of. And I agree with you. Taking a position based solely on the reports that you get from whatever news source you have uh, is a little dangerous. I mean, you can say, I don't like bombing civilians, schools and hospitals, etc. But you don't know what else is going on. You don't know, and so it's very dangerous to publicly take a position on that issue, because as soon as you stick your head in one way or the other, you're going to get it blown off by people who think that you're Islamophobic or anti-Semitic. But so, at any rate, I understand that you're saying boycott. What I do, Haley, is in the morning and at night, I'll go to the New York Times, articles, their page of articles, and I'll just see what they are saying has happened. Henry Kissinger dying at 100 years old, and there was a column today about him, and I thought, I'm not going to read it. I don't want to be part of this story. I don't want to get hooked. I have other books I'm reading that have much more interesting stories than to read about a person who's done things that I wouldn't have supported. But I don't want to get caught in the drama.
I think that's the fight right now, to be present or to be caught up in the drama, because the drama has nothing to do with the present moment.
Yeah.
It's full of assumptions. It's full of, this is what happened, this is what might have happened or might not have happened. So I do think that there is a fight to be present. And for me, it is that very much looking at the double standards. And, we started this call off with the biases, like being able to have the humility to say, I have a bias here. I have a double standard here, whether I'm holding people to that or I'm holding myself to a different standard.
Yeah.
Sort of trying to resolve that as quickly as possible so that I'm not moving through the world with these double standards. And I think for me, that's probably the most powerful activism I have. It makes me feel better egotistically to say that I'm just not very happy with the US right now.
Yeah.
And specifically, specifically US politics.
Yeah.
I'm separating.
Yeah, because what does US mean? It's like, you can say you hate the church, but there are a lot of people who make up the church who are wonderful, courageous people. And so, I've learned to stop saying the church. I've learned to say more the curia, which is the cardinals that make up, the rules, or the Vatican, rather than the church. But Haley, interestingly, I'm 75. I'm becoming, and I've spent my life doing diversity training on LGBTQ issues, but I was always inclusive of every other issue I could think of, to talk about at the moment. I'm becoming aware of how many biases I have. And they'll pop up and I'll think, where did that come from? You've spent all these years, touchy-feely helping people feel like we're all in this together. And then you have these stereotypes that are popping into your head. And I don't condemn myself for having that happen, because you can't control what pops into your head. You can only control how you respond to it. And so, I think I don't want to have that thought. That's not me. That's not the person I want to be. That doesn't mean the thought won't pop up again at some point, but you have to keep practicing saying, no, stop. It's not the person I want to be. I don't know where the stereotype is coming from. I don't need to know where it's coming from. I want to be in the moment. But I was a little surprised by that. Our Thanksgiving was very small. We just had 4 people, and I worked really hard on the meal. I cooked long in advance. Everything was perfect. I swear. The turkey was so moist. It was the best
Wonderful.
cranberry sauce I ever made. The mashed potatoes, giblet gravy. Everybody loved everything. I had by mistake, I bought some jicama because it was mixed in with the rutabaga, and I brought it home and I said, this doesn't look like rutabaga. So it doesn't have a lot of flavor. Jicama
No.
doesn't. So I peeled it and boiled it and with salt and pepper and butter and it wasn't awful. It just tasted like salt and pepper.
It was a little bit different.
Yeah, people say that it's usually eaten raw like an apple, but
Yeah.
anyway, people were our two guests were chatting away as we were approaching the dinner table. They were talking about zoning, and I said, "Okay, stop." I said, "No more zoning talk. Let's sit, be aware of each other, be aware of the friendship. Let's be aware of this food. How lucky we are because there are people who are hungry today and people who struggle to think of what they have thanked for. So you have, and I know they're glad to have some direction there because you have to step in. Um, I often use the example of if you're hosting a party and one person gets drunk and obnoxious, right? And you can see the effect on everybody.
Mhm.
It's your job as the host to go to the person and say it's time to go home
And for you to go.
because they
Yeah.
can't change their behavior in a second. They're drunk, and if they're a mean drunk, that's not going to change. So if they came with somebody, you ask that person to take them home. If they didn't, you call them a ride and send them on their way because otherwise you're sending everyone home with a horrible experience
Yeah.
because you felt it was not okay to make a decision and step in, which for years I didn't do. I sort of let it go thinking, what right do I have? But when you start realizing that you went home disappointed, or if you had worked really hard on the party and realized that your fantasy of what was going to happen didn't happen at all, um, it can be because you didn't take the actions that you really needed to
And I
take.
think that right there reflects a double standard.
It's
You're
talk.
allowing, you're allowing somebody else a completely different standard than everybody else at the party.
Yeah, 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 and I mean, we had Thanksgiving dinner one time, and a guest came stoned on OxyContin. And I didn't recognize it right away. I thought he was acting strangely, but other people at the table, all were aware that he was not present,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have the wherewithal to I didn't want to embarrass him, and it didn't feel like it was so bad that it was ruining the meal.
Right.
It's just that people were aware of it. So as soon as he left, people started talking about, you
And
know,
yeah, I mean, I think that happens, and it's just an interesting thing how we try and protect the people that are ultimately ruining it for everybody else.
yeah, 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 and that's not a good course of action.
Huge double standard. And
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the point, this is what we're being shown today is this is a time for all of us to look at where we have these double standards and to raise the standard, but also even out the standard.
hmm yeah. I find that, and it's particularly at my age. I had somebody on Facebook said, "You talk about age too much," and I thought, well, you know what? I'm 75. My sciatic is so bad it's hard to stand sometime, and I don't know. And I'm wobbly. I really have people looked at me walking around. They think I was drunk because see, I'm not now all that stable. So I've been asking Ray questions like, well, if you go before me, do we have some thing with the Amazon where they're going to keep sending paper towel and toilet paper. 'Cause I
Suddenly you have a room full.
I don't need as much as we've got. So I'm kind of asking him those kind of questions. But one of the things I'm aware of at my age is that I'm glad to not be immersing myself in politics. It's all just a story. Everything that is going on is a story. And I want to be part of the story of those people in the world who saw what was happening and chose a different course, chose to be present without judgment to the best of their ability. And there are millions of us out there struggling with that issue, but there are millions of us out there who are on a spiritual path that is inclusive.
Yeah.
And so can we shift a little?
Let's shift.
Yeah, because I am trying to write a column about when does having sex become making love, and what the terms are used even by people who've been together a long time. They'll say, yeah, we had sex last night, and they did, but was that all it was? I saw a really couple of handsome guys when I was in the car last week. I passed, I thought, boy, if I had a different compass and I was younger, I would love to have connected with them. If I had connected with them, it would have been having had sex, unless I could create a relationship really quickly and call it making love. I sort of feel like women are more inclined to use the term making love because they tend to think of sex in a relational context. I know that's a stereotype. I know there are women who, were happily out there, having sex. But so what do you think about that?
I think there's sort of the general, when I can look outside and look at the conversations I've had about the difference between sex, like the word we had sex versus we made love. And then there's obviously my personal experience with it. So when I look out and sort of put the conversations together, a lot of the time, sex is more of a one-night stand or a need being met.
Mm-hmm.
And making love is much more about sort of that connection, being fully present with the person, not just with the action.
Yeah.
Most of the people that make love are in relationships, or they're in a relationship with somebody that they say, I love you to. And I think that's where it shifts, where you're comfortable acknowledging love. That's when it shifts from sex to love. That's what
Can sex with a stranger, a one-night stand, be making love?
I mean, not in my experience.
Well, let's say everyone creates their own perspective on what's going on. So what's going on in your mind and the connection you're making with the person, right, can be a manifestation of love, right? Because you're trying to connect soul to soul. You're trying to make sure their needs are met. This is not about just you getting what you want. I think it's possible. I don't think it's possible easily. Yeah.
I don't know, because the way that it feels for me, having sex, more like, and speaking of having sex in terms of a one-night stand versus having sex with somebody that you have created connection with over time, or you've grown into that connection over time, is different when I look at it from an energetic perspective. Because when I look at the one-night stand, sex from an energetic perspective, there is very little. There may be respect there where that kind of love is there, but it's more about a need being met. It's more about the energy exchange is not even. And I think when you're making love, the energy exchange is more even.
I feel that from my own experience, when Ray and I would have had sex through our relationship, sometimes it was satisfying a need, for touch and relaxation. And sometimes I would be so fully present to it that I thought I was in heaven. And I don't know if he was thinking the same thing, right? Because I didn't ask him. I could say out loud, this feels like sacred. This feels divine to me. But I've also had experiences of just having had sex with them where I wasn't thinking. I was thinking about, is the dinner burning?
It's
do I have anything in the refrigerator for dinner tomorrow? That's having sex.
Yeah, I think it's still like the energetic exchange is different when there's the way that I see it, at least, is that when it's just a one night stand with no long term or no sort of we're going to see each other again after this, the energy exchange is very different. And if you're in a relationship and there's times where it's just sex and there's times where you're making love, there's still, I think, a deeper connection. The energy is still different. I don't know if I'm explaining that well. Like the connection of that sexual act is still stronger and more tangible than
would you agree that there are people who have been in long-term relationships who, if we sat with them, they would say to us, privately, confidentially, all that we have done over the years is have sex. I've never felt that we were making love.
I think is entirely possible.
Yeah.
I think it's entirely possible. And I don't think that has a whole lot to do with sex. I think it has a whole lot to do with knowing oneself, and it's part of the hero's journey.
And
there are an enormous amount of people in this world that are in relationships because it's comfortable.
Yes. And or they like the image of having the young man on their arm, when they're older. And in some ways, in some instances, there's great love there. In some instances, it's about appearance. And so the sex would be about need rather than making love, I would think. Do you follow what I'm saying there? So the young man is being used, and the older man is being used too, for financial security, or the person loves older men. I mean, you can't make a judgment based upon a visual. I think the only thing that informs us is when people tell us, what was their reality, and reality is perspective.
We have to allow context to come into conversations.
Yeah.
And I think one of the benefits of practicing being present and practicing sort of that humility of having awareness of biases, allowing the biases, and then choosing to end a bias and choosing something better, allows you to sort of read energy and to read people and to be able to feel into resonation and be able to know that, okay, that truth resonates with me. Or when I look at that and I see sort of those two people connecting, I can feel where that's a real loving connection or if that's a transactional connection.
So if I can, for you, the really important word is energy. When you are guiding people in your conversations, when they call you about what they're going to do, where they're going, for you, the thing is all about energy. Where's the
about energy?
Yeah, and uh, and would you define energy as focus, uh, uh, investment, involvement? Uh,
I think you have to be focused, you have to be invested, you have to be committed to be able to be present with the energy.
mhm.
I think the energy is energy, and like love is love. But to be able to use the energy to inform your presence, you have to be focused, you have to be committed, you have to practice, you have to be disciplined to be present with the energy.
Mhm.
So, in my experience of reading energy and being fully focused on a life where energy is the source information, when I use energy and tap into energy and read the energy, energy is always present, just like love is always present, but there's different feelings of it, there's different forces of it, if that's the right way of saying it. So when I say that, that connection is transactional, yes, there can be love there, but is it the unconditional love that I believe we should all be moving towards, and I think we're all actually moving towards, whether we want to or not? It's not unconditional. It's very much based on conditions of, I will be around as long as you have money, and you will be around as long as I want you around.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
conditional love. And I think we see a lot of relationships today based on conditional love, where it's he's here, I'm here, she's here, we're just going to be together, versus there are definitely lovely relationships where it is unconditional love.
yeah. Having children can be, a reason for a condition
Mm-hmm.
of love, fear of financial destitution can,
Family.
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you ever uh, substitute for the word energy, Holy Spirit?
Yeah, I think they're the same thing.
Tao?
Same thing. For me,
Yeah,
they're the same thing. Dao,
yeah,
Chi, same thing.
same thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
There's a
interesting.
lot of names coming up for it now because I was listening to a podcast earlier this week where they're putting scientific names to chi, to energy, and calling it these crazy names. And it's just like, dude, that's energy.
Yeah,
On
yeah.
you.
August Gold, whose name you've heard me say, she would laugh saying, science is finally catching up to what we've been saying, and now they're putting labels all over it. But it doesn't change our experience of what we've been doing for many, many years.
Wasn't.
Focus and meditation and quieting and stilling yourself so that you can see what I most love, Haley, is the experience of being able to withdraw from the moment and look down upon it, as if I was watching a film, right? So that I see myself in the context, of, because otherwise my reality is Ray, me, and Sebastian, the garden, the house, and then these experiences with you and with friends coming over. That's it, and so I want to be able to take that framework and expand upon it in terms of better understanding my relationship to to God, to higher power, to the universe, whatever. One of the things I love about getting older is it gives the time you have to reflect on your life. Bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a fascinating experience. I told you that about my writing the memoir. It was just, I thought I knew the story and knew me, and boy, when I started telling the story, and saw how much I kept changing and changing and changing. I loved it because I was changing for the better. I was on a upward climb, and I loved knowing that and seeing that. And Haley, after finishing the book and sending it off, because I'm delighted to have a publisher, I know that there's more things for me to do. We do this podcast, I write my column, but I feel really good about there being a period to my story. There can be there's an epilogue, but I have a sense of satisfaction that if I got hit by a car today, once the book came out, people would know, who I was, what my life was about, and why. And it's very honest. I mean, the book is very honest.
In over the last month, and with everything that's sort of being highlighted for us, I think I've also been sort of looking back and being able to sort of have that, are we closing down the past, and who am I now, and where am I going now, and what am I supposed to do with all of this now? And there is a lot of relief that comes in being able to sort of put that book away and be like, and that's closed. Like full stop, period, the end. And I think it's, coming back to the whole idea of biases. For me, there's an enormous amount of relief in the humility of recognizing a bias, because it feels like that same sense of the end that goes with the past now, and that's no longer what I'm taking with me into this phase.
Yeah, I would say for me, my experience is that it's still a traveling companion, but an unwelcomed one, and one that I'm now very aware of. But it's still there. It's gonna pop up.
It's always there, but it's definitely not so much something that it's on a need to know basis. I call it my data lake. If I need information, I go fishing in the data lake, my past, and if there's anything in there that can sort of inform the present, fantastic. But it's very much I only go into it if I need it. And usually that needing is through meditation, where I'm sitting with a question or sitting with something, and I will get like, well, have you done this before? Is this a repeating pattern?
Haley, if you were really sick right now, and it was you were told that you had a short time to live, would you try to reconcile with your folks, or would you let go of it?
No, man, I would make the most of every single second that I was present, and I wouldn't do a whole lot differently, because I want, whether I'm sick or whether I'm rich or whether I'm poor, whether I'm healthy, every moment has to be the best moment. So there's, I wouldn't try and resolve the past. I would very much want to go out on such a high standard of being in my potential as much as possible and building that potential. So it'd be very much present, future sort of movement.
So every string does not need to be attached. You can have loose string.
For me, no. And I think that's where I have to, my motivation, don't be the contradiction. I teach about being fully present and being fully present with what's going on around you and being open to the blessings of your physicality. There is a level of saying thank you for all of the past that's happened, because without the past, I wouldn't be in this position right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a tiny measure of it. 90% of it is opening my eyes and being, fully present to what's happening right now.
Right. And
So
how do you tell your clients to do that? How do you tell them to be fully present to the moment?
fundamentally, it is teaching about breathing, about heart rate, about gratitude. Fundamentally, and that's one of sort of the, every client is unique, but there is one foundational practice that gets everybody into that, which is the breathing, which is the gratitude. That's sort of the gateway into being able to express yourself and being able to step into potential.
I read a quote online that that Henry David Thoreau would usually include in his talks, and it was about how I've entered the woods, but my mind is still back at the work that I have to do in town, and so I'm aware that I'm not present to the woods, which is why I went into it in the first place, was to be present to it. So I really like the advice to use all of your senses to be in the moment.
Absolutely.
Don't listen, smell, look, right? And when a thought pops up, say, not now. Not now.
I think it's the beauty of experiencing yourself. We're physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I think our physical body is the physicality of human life. So being able to have awareness of how to use it, how to take care of it so that it continues being useful, is sort of really, really important. And breathing is one of the easiest things to be able to create awareness with your body. Breathing is one of the easiest things to be able to start having awareness again that you have 5 senses.
Mm-hmm.
Or 6 senses, depending on what your belief system is. And breathing allows you to be able to hear.
Mm-hmm.
If you can slow down and be fully present with your breath, then your mind will be like, well, what am I looking at? Excellent. What are you looking at? Be fully present with that.
Mm-hmm. And do you need to look at anything?
Yeah. I find myself now, like my meditations are pretty much split between closed eye and open eye meditations.
Between what, hey?
Closed eye, where my eyes are closed, and meditations where my eyes are wide open. And
yeah.
I'm looking to be present. I'm looking at what's around me and being fully present with my location.
Having a disability or pain, it is a challenge to not have thought in your mind, because pain is constantly there. And
so is noise.
Pardon me?
So is noise.
Yes, but the only noise right now I'm hearing is you and me talking.
I think, because we've practiced. We've had some practice in being able to listen and to hear the nothingness. I think if you haven't had that practice and you're starting, pain, disability, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, it's all still there, and it still makes sort of starting and the commitment really difficult. But once you start, and there are many instances of this, that people who are in deep pain that begin meditating and commit to meditating find that while they're in meditation, they don't feel pain.
I get that. Yeah, meditation, I think, is one of the healing practices.
Yeah. So I think it's, I think I will not underestimate how difficult it is to start, because I remember when I was starting, every single excuse in the world I was using. And still to this day, I'm like, oh, I'm too busy to meditate. That's still noise.
Mm-hmm. Did you think you know yourself well? Or are you ever tempted to ask people outside to describe you as they see you?
I never ask people to describe me as they see me in those words. I do sometimes get exhausted and want to ask other people to sort it out for me. And that's like, I have sort of my healers that very early on in my sort of journey, I was seeing them sort of twice a month. And now sort of I know myself better and well enough to be able to read my body and be able to be like, okay, this is what you need. If you still don't have clear clarification, this is who you need to go and see. So yeah, I still do have that need of being able to have somebody else tell me what's going on with me.
Yeah.
And that comes in different ways, because sometimes it is that outside validation of, actually, you're a really good person. And sometimes it's, no, actually, you read this right.
I think it's important to tell people that they're really good people.
I think so too. I think it's good to tell them without having to be asked.
A friend is in the hospital having heart surgery, and she has an alienated relationship with her two children, and so she's alone, and except for what friends, a neighbor she has. And I just wrote to her and said, you're a really good person, and I bet you have a really good relationship with the nurses, because you have a wonderful laugh and you have a great smile and great attitude. And I think we all need to hear that from time to time, to remind ourselves that that we are good. We make mistakes, but we're basically really good people.
I find when we talk about love, I find that as one of my love languages now, is saying thank you and acknowledging the kindness or the sweetness that is shown to me by somebody else.
Yeah.
And being able to say it without sort of having to have an example of it, if that makes sense, or being asked to share it. And of course there is some ego attached to it, because I do feel good when I can share that, like, oh my God, thank you so much for just being you, because I think you're an amazing person. But I also do sort of assure my friends that when they're having a bad day and they're like, oh, I don't think I'm doing so well, or I'm taking 10 steps back, I do also offer in those moments sort of that validation of like, no, you're okay. You're actually a good person. Look around you.
One of the things that I have been trying to do in the last couple of years is making sure that Ray hears from me, that I see what he's doing and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
People say, oh my God, 47 years, congratulations. Well, much of that time, we were a well-oiled machine that each knew our tasks, did them, and didn't really receive high fives because you just sort of, you each had your task. And it's really important to me that before I go, that Ray knows how much I admire him and how grateful I am to him. And because I feel in some ways that I didn't give him that, enough over
I
that
think
time.
you also didn't know what you know now. So now
Yeah.
you're in a position to say, this is really important to me, so I'm going to start doing it.
Yeah.
And, for me, it's very much the same thing, being able to say thank you to my people. Just thank you for being in my life, or thank you for inviting me to coffee, and thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Or, thank you for picking up my water bottle. And
Yeah.
I remember I was so shocked by this. Probably about 2 years ago, I was with another woman that I'd recently met. She's a psychologist. And she told me that I say thank you too much. And that was a symptom of a traumatic childhood and PTSD. And it literally blew me backwards. I was like, wait, saying thank you too much is a bad thing? And she's like, yeah, it's a symptom of this and you're overdoing it. And I found that so interesting that we are in a world now where saying thank you too often is considered bad.
Pathological.
Yeah.
I
And
think
so
I think she needs therapy.
I think a lot of psychologists need therapy.
I
But I'm
think
at the point now where it's almost like it's to me, it just makes so much sense to be able to say thank you to everybody. If I see that you're noticing me and shifting your world to accommodate me, thank you.
yes. Yeah. Thank you. Please and thank you. Uh, I don't know how many times a day we say it to each other, but there's always a thank you.
I think that, when we talk about sort of when does sex become making love, I think when you can continually acknowledge the wonderful presence of a person and continually be in a space of, I see you. Thank you for doing these things for me that you don't necessarily have to do, but you're doing them because you're acknowledging my presence.
Yes. And you love me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one can make love. You're going to laugh at this, I think, but I think that when you're with a partner having sex, for one of you, it could be making love and the other not.
Yeah.
Because it's all here. So I'm making love and I'm thinking, this incredible man who gives so much to me and how blessed I am to have him in my life. And thank you, God, for this experience. If he's not thinking the same thing, it doesn't eliminate my experience.
No, I think, and I would almost put my bottom dollar on, even if, the partner was more in it for the physical aspect of it, fulfilling, and they're still fulfilling from a place of, I love this person and this is the person that I want to be with.
That's right.
This is the person that I want, and fulfilling this need happens in a very specific way with this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that they're still fully present with the connection between the two of you. It's just you're getting different things out of it, different bits of information out of it.
For some people, there's no need to make love in their life. Having sex is what it's about. Having as much sex with as many people as they can have. Mm-hmm. And there were days in the past, pre-AIDS, in which some people would have sex with 8-10 people the same day.
How?
Yep.
I mean,
they would go from one to the other, to the other, to the other, to get dressed, go out, pick somebody else up, clean up, go out?
For me, back to how we started this conversation. I don't know. I don't understand it, but I understand that it's possible. It's their perspective, it's their reality, and it is their right just as much as it's my right to sit here and say that's not for me.
Exactly. It is their right. They have one life and they can choose to do with it whatever they want.
And the beauty of their choices show me the beauty of my choices.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know
And
we're
I
running.
say thank you. I may not agree and it may not be for me, but I'm still going to say thank you.
I know we're almost out of time, but I wanted to, I've been asked to do a session with the LGBTQ employee group at a corporation on Zoom. And my topic is, what gifts do we bring to the table? And in thinking about it, I thought, we really need to talk about the soft underbelly of the community, those things that we really don't want straight people to see or talk about, because there's lessons that have been learned in those experiences too. What are they? Insights that others don't have because they didn't choose to express themselves sexually in the same way as often. I want to look at the things that we could be embarrassed by, but nevertheless, if we think it through, we can see why there's a gift there.
There's
Resilience, courage, whatever it is. But my big thing right now in working with gay people is to have them focus on the gifts that they bring to the people around them, to life itself. Because we, for so long, like every other group, have been on the defensive, talking about how we're oppressed. And I don't want to talk about oppression anymore. I want to talk about.
We have to break the pattern. We have to talk about the gifts. We have to talk about people's light. And each one of those is unique. And I think if we can very much change the conversation and start the conversation with thank you. Thank you for being good. Thank you for showing me your way of being.
Yes. And you may not be aware of it. So let's spend some time thinking about it.
Yeah. And let's talk about it. And, we don't always have to agree, but we can at least allow each other the space to do our own thing and not have to be judgmental about it or be oppressive about it.
We can listen without judgment.
We can just
and then go home and think through what we heard.
And say thank you.
And say thank you. Thank you for the privilege of your time.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's beautiful. I think there's a lot going on in the world, but I think the majority of what's happening in the world is beautiful. It is people showing their gifts. And it is a massive thank you to everybody for being here.
Yes. Yeah. Majority of people in the world are going about their lives doing good.
Peaceful,
peaceful and grateful. So
we say thank you when we share those.
Yeah. I will see you in a couple of weeks.
We'll see each other in 2 weeks in December.
Yes. I love our time.
I do too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Haley, for your time.
And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.